When was the last time you laughed? If you're anything like me, it was probably within the last hour. Studies show that the average person laughs about 20 times a day, or a little more than once an hour while we're awake. Laughter is part of the human experience. It's baked into our DNA. It's been studied for thousands of years, from the ancient Greek playwrights to modern day stand-up comedians. And it's a topic we're going to explore today in Can Anyone Tell Me?, a new show by Max Studios. Before we get started, I want to give a little context to what this series is about. We're here on a college campus, which means we have access to some very smart people, our professors, and we thought it'd be cool to answer questions from our community, from you, with their expertise. So this is that. This first question comes from Abi Bielstein. Take it away, Abby.
My question is laughter what makes us human?
Is laughter what makes us human? That's such a good question. And I think where I want to start with that question is by talking to a scientist. So I reached out to Dr. Shivas Amin, a biology professor here on campus, to see what he has to say. So the question we got from Abby was, is laughing what makes us human? So I guess the first thing I want to ask is there any other animal that can laugh?
Oh yeah. So we actually can notice laughing in a lot of the ape cousins that we have, right? So chimpanzees, orangutans, they're all capable of laughter, and they do, right? So they do something that looks very much like human laughing when you tickle them. So that's a conserved response that we see in like humans and apes. And even when they're playing and chasing each other, they tend to do a laugh-like action.
So you said a conserved response. What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, so when you're a biologist, right, and you're trying to distinguish different species and their characteristics and what makes them unique, you are looking for unique characteristics, right? Things that you won't see in our evolutionary cousins that we do see in one unique species. So in the case of laughter, laughter is a conserved thing, right? It exists in our cousins. There are humans that laugh, obviously, but then there are chimps and there are apes and there are all kinds of things that can laugh as well.
So does that mean we're laughing at the same kinds of things, or is it like a spectrum of what there can be? Like humans have comedians, right? We have people who, like, for a living, construct words and ideas to make us laugh. I imagine chimps don't have that, but like, what do they have? Like, do they have like a sense of play, a sense of joking that they can exhibit?
Absolutely. So you definitely see characteristics of fun, engaging kind of humor that happens with creatures like chimpanzees and apes. So they have something that's very similar, but obviously our jokes are different, right? We have a very specific language, and our jokes are dependent on the language that we use. So if we ever figure out how to speak chimpanese, right, maybe we can figure out what their jokes are. But as it stands, because we can't speak their language, we really won't be able to tell if they have anything that's equivalent to like spoken humor.
So like with that in mind, if laughing is not the thing that makes us human, from a biologist perspective, what does?
Yes, this is something that I talk to a lot of people about. What is the unique characteristic that makes us specially human? And sometimes people try to attribute it to like our social constructs or our creativity, but you can see evidence of complex social structures, creativity in other creatures, advanced languages. So I always give a very biological answer, which is our feet. If you notice, no other creature has our terrible feet, and our feet are terrible, right? But what we don't recognize is why are they the way that they are. So our feet make us very good at long distance walking. That's not something that you see in our closest ancestors. When we look at the chimps and we look at orangutans and things like that, they don't have the same feet we do. So that's a feature that's not conserved, right? That's a feature that's unique. And that is because we are an ape that is specialized for walking long distances. And if you ask some people, it also helps us swim. So you see a lot in different apes that they don't swim effectively, and that water can be a very effective barrier. If you go to the zoo, there's usually like a water moat that separates this chimp, and they can go bounding off of a tree, and you think, why would that stop them? And it's because they're not very effective swimmers. Whereas we, because of the shape of our feet, can be extremely good swimmers. If you ever looked at Michael Phelps's feet, right? Yes. They're gigantic
practically
paddles.
Flippers.
Yeah, right? So yeah, our feet, I think, is what makes us human.
Ah, that's so interesting. So it's our feet. Okay. Okay, well, thank you so much for enlightening us today and kind of sharing that information that you have.
No problem.
According to Dr. Amin, it's our feet that separate us from every other living thing on this planet. But that still makes me wonder, is there something else, something not in our biology that makes us human? So I decided to go talk to Father Dempsey Rosales Acosta, a theologian here on campus, to see what he might have to say. first I want to ask you like your thought on like the idea of laughter and joy in building community and connection in humans. But then if that's not a thing that's unique to us, like what makes us humans?
Yes, to laugh is a very important characteristics of the human condition, human society, the way how we actually are born. But there's something very interesting. In fact, I was meditating this, and something that I love so much, it's so mesmerizing, is to see babies laughing. When we are born, we need to learn a language. We need to learn how to eat. We need to learn how to walk, but we don't need to learn how to laugh.
It's built into us.
Exactly. It's something natural. It's in our, let's say, in the way how we are. It's in our own human nature. It's quite fascinating, no? But then we can approach this from a different point of view. Of course, laugh cannot be the absolute criterion to say, oh, that is what makes us human, a human being. No, so now we need to, what really makes us human being? Okay, the use of reason.
But I want to explore that term a little bit, right? When
Absolutely.
we say reason, what are we saying? Because it's not just like being like able to intellectually figure something out. Other animals can figure out how to use tools.
Yes.
What do we mean when we say reason?
Well, reason is just this ability to resolve problems in a logical manner, to have a logical discourse with the premise, protosis and then an apodosis, and to have this sequence. But when we enter into the field of theology, right? So this reason, that means the use of intellectual capacities, in one way or another will lead us by this logical thinking, observation, perception, epistemology, right? Through the perception we learn, and then we are capable to create more complex thoughts to arrive to the point that we can actually think in abstract, that we have the capacity to express abstracts. In that moment, we are in the realm in which the reason is challenged by another kind of knowledge, another kind of dimension, another kind of reality, which is God.
Okay, so I like where all this is going. Where you're talking about like the revelation coming from God. Like in the Catholic world, we hear a lot is that we're made in the image and likeness of God.
Yes.
And so I want to talk about how that relates to what we're talking about here, because at first when I heard that, like the way I interpreted that was like, okay, if you smash all people that ever existed together, like we look like God, but like, no, that's not it, right? It's not a physical look, like we're made in the image and likeness of God. What does that mean? What are they talking about when they say that?
I'm sorry that I'm using...
I just want to point out to everybody on this thing that he has a book and it's straight up written in Hebrew.
This is the Biblia Hebraica. That is actually the original text in Hebrew. So because you mentioned that is actually in the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 26, which is very important. It's just that, I'm getting a little bit blind. So if you don't mind,
go ahead.
I will use, okay, here, verse 26. Vayomer Elohim, and God said, Na'aseh, let us make, plural, very important, Na'aseh, Adam, man, Betsalmenu, Kid Mutenu. That is actually the exact Hebrew text. I'm not creating anything. It's exactly as it is. So it's just that later on became very, very similar. No? Image and likeness. No. It's actually, this is explicative. What really means this salmenu, our image, is actually that is similar to us. Similar to us in what? The way of feeling, the way of love, the way how actually we can interiorize this kind of relationships, this community, because when Jesus is revealed, he revealed that this plural, na'aseh, let us make, in the Old Testament, is a Trinitarian God. When God was creating in that moment the man, Adam, but in your translation we say man, Adam, literally is because already he got the prefigure, and that implies not just only physicality, implies the way how we feel, we think, we actually enter into communion with the other. So that is why our Christian life in the community of the church today has to be a reflection of the Trinitarian community in heaven. So we become an extension of God here.
All right, I feel a little overwhelmed. I mean, that was a lot to take in, but it was really good. Let me summarize this real quick, just so I can continue processing it. First, he affirmed the role of laughter in building connectivity and community. Then he brought up our ability to reason. And when I say reason, I don't mean the ability to problem solve. I mean the ability to think abstractly, to think supernaturally. And when I say supernaturally, that's super as in like more than nature, not supernatural like in ghosts. And it's that ability to think supernaturally, that ability to think abstractly, that allows us to ponder finding meaning in our lives. And that brings us to our last point, that our ability to ponder makes us think about or want to unite with that which is greater within us, that being God. Our ability to think, to find meaning, and to search for meaning allows us to love one another and to love God. So what makes us human? That call to love the way God loves, so completely and fully as to live our life purpose and joy. That and our feet.